In the quiet suburbs of Columbus, Ohio, a 9-year-old boy named Daniel Cooper sat at the dinner table one evening in March 2019 when he suddenly pushed his plate away. His parents, Michael and Rebecca, watched as their son's face went pale. He stared at the wall, his breathing shallow. "I need to tell you something," he finally said. "I've been remembering things that happened to me, but not in this life." Rebecca reached across the table, concerned. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" Daniel's hands trembled slightly as he spoke. "I remember being shot. I remember a theater. I remember my wife screaming." His voice carried a weight that seemed impossible for a child his age. "I remember being Abraham Lincoln." The Coopers exchanged glances. Their son had always been a normal, playful child who enjoyed soccer and video games. He'd never shown particular interest in history or the Civil War. They had no Lincoln memorabilia in their home, no books about the 16th president on their shelves. Yet over the following weeks, Daniel would describe details about Lincoln's final moments that would send researchers scrambling through historical archives and eyewitness accounts from 1865. Daniel's memories didn't arrive all at once. They came in fragments, triggered by seemingly random moments. One afternoon, while walking past a building in downtown Columbus, he stopped abruptly outside a brick structure with tall windows. "That feels like Ford's Theater," he said quietly. "Not exactly the same, but the feeling is the same. The height of those windows, the way the light comes through." His mother began documenting everything. She contacted Dr. James Morrison, a psychiatrist at Ohio State University who had published papers on childhood memory phenomena. Dr. Morrison was skeptical but intrigued. He'd investigated several cases of children claiming past life memories, though none involving historical figures of Lincoln's prominence. He agreed to meet with Daniel under carefully controlled conditions. The first interview took place in Dr. Morrison's office on a Saturday morning in April. Daniel sat in a leather chair that seemed too large for him, swinging his legs slightly. Dr. Morrison began with gentle questions, establishing rapport before moving into deeper territory. "Can you tell me what you remember about April 14th, 1865? Daniel's demeanor shifted. His casual childhood energy receded, replaced by something more contemplative, more burdened. "I was tired that day," he said. "So tired. I remember feeling like I'd carried something heavy for years and years, and it was finally almost time to set it down. We'd won. The war was ending. But I couldn't quite feel joy about it yet." Dr. Morrison took notes, maintaining a neutral expression. "What happened that evening?" "We went to the theater." Daniel's voice became quieter. "My wife wanted to go. Mary. She loved the theater. We sat in a box, up high, where everyone could see us. I didn't really want to be there. I wanted to rest. But she was happy, and I thought maybe I could relax for an evening. Just watch a play and forget about everything for a few hours." The details Daniel provided matched historical accounts, but Dr. Morrison knew this information was available in textbooks and documentaries. He shifted his approach. "Can you describe what you were wearing?" Daniel closed his eyes. "A black suit, a white shirt. I remember the collar feeling stiff against my neck, and a black bow tie that I'd adjusted several times before we left. My coat was heavy. Everything felt heavy that night." Historical records confirmed Lincoln had worn a black Brooks Brothers suit that evening. Dr. Morrison continued. "What do you remember about the theater itself? Not the facts you might read in a book, but what it felt like to be there." Daniel opened his eyes, staring at a point beyond Dr. Morrison's shoulder. The theater was warm. Too warm. There were so many people, and they kept looking up at our box. I could feel their eyes on us, even when I wasn't looking at them. The play was funny. People were laughing. I remember thinking it was nice to hear people laugh again. For 4 years, there hadn't been much laughter." He paused, his child's hands gripping the armrests of the chair. "Mary was holding my hand. She was happy. I squeezed her hand and thought about how we'd been through so much together, how we'd lost children, how the war had aged both of us." Dr. Morrison leaned forward slightly. "What happened next?" "I heard something behind me, a small sound like a door opening. I started to turn, but I didn't turn fast enough." Daniel's breathing quickened. It was a loud noise, the loudest noise I'd ever heard. And then pain. Sharp, immediate pain in my head, behind my left ear. Tears formed in Daniel's eyes. I tried to understand what had happened. I could hear Mary screaming, but it sounded far away. I could feel myself falling forward. Everything got very bright and then very dark, and I remember thinking, clearly thinking that this was how it ended. Not in battle, not making a speech, but in a theater watching a comedy. Dr. Morrison allowed silence to fill the room. Daniel wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, suddenly looking like the 9-year-old boy he was. "That's what I remember most," he said softly. Not the dying part, really, but that moment of understanding. That sense of, oh, this is it. This is how my story ends. Over the following months, Dr. Morrison conducted additional interviews, varying his approach and questions. He brought in colleagues, including Dr. Patricia Hernandez, a historian specializing in the Lincoln assassination. Dr. Hernandez had spent 15 years studying eyewitness accounts, medical reports, and forensic evidence related to Lincoln's death. She was deeply skeptical when Dr. Morrison first contacted her. Their meeting took place at the Cooper home. Daniel sat on the living room couch, his mother nearby. Dr. Hernandez had prepared a series of questions designed to test whether Daniel's knowledge came from documentaries or books versus something more unusual. She began with details that were often incorrectly portrayed in popular media. "Can you tell me who else was in the box with you that night?" she asked. Daniel didn't hesitate. "Mary, my wife, and a young couple, Major Rathbone and his fiancée, Clara Harris. They were supposed to be guards, in a way, but really they were just company. Mary wanted other people there." This was accurate. Dr. Hernandez continued. "After you were shot, what happened to Major Rathbone?" Daniel frowned, concentrating. "He tried to stop the man who shot me. I couldn't see it clearly. Everything was confused, but I heard struggling. I think Rathbone was cut. Stabbed, maybe. He tried to grab the shooter, but couldn't hold him." Historical records confirmed that John Wilkes Booth had slashed Rathbone with a knife during his escape. Dr. Hernandez felt a chill despite her skepticism. These weren't details commonly emphasized in children's history books. "Can you describe the gun that was used?" "I didn't see it," Daniel said, "but I heard it. And later, I don't know if this is a real memory or something else, but I remember someone saying it was a small pistol. A Derringer. Single shot. Booth had indeed used a .44 caliber Derringer pistol." Dr. Hernandez shifted her approach. "Where were you taken after you were shot?" "Across the street." Daniel's voice became distant. "To a house. I remember being carried downstairs, across a street. There was a narrow hallway, and then a small room. The bed was too short. My legs hung off the end. I remember that bothered people, that I didn't fit the bed properly." This detail, so oddly specific and human, was documented in multiple eyewitness accounts. Lincoln's 6'4" frame had indeed been too long for the bed in William Peterson's boarding house, where he was taken after the shooting. Dr. Hernandez felt her academic skepticism wavering. "What else do you remember about that room?" "It was dark," Daniel said. "There were people coming and going. Doctors. I could hear Mary crying. I could hear voices talking about me like I wasn't there, but I was there somehow. Not fully, but partially, like I was in between places." He looked directly at Dr. Hernandez. "I remember the strangest thing. There was wallpaper with a pattern, flowers or vines, something repeating. I stared at that pattern for what felt like hours. It was one of the last things I saw clearly." The Peterson house bedroom had indeed featured floral wallpaper. Dr. Hernandez consulted her notes. This detail appeared in some obscure historical accounts, but wasn't widely known. "How long were you in that room?" "Until morning," Daniel said. "Hours and hours. I kept trying to wake up, to speak, to tell Mary the first was sorry for bringing her to the theater. But I couldn't make my body work anymore. And then, as the sun was starting to come up, everything just stopped." Dr. Morrison, who had been observing quietly, asked, "What did it feel like when everything stopped?" Daniel thought for a long moment. "Relief," he finally said. "I'd been so tired. And then I wasn't tired anymore. I wasn't anything anymore. Until I was Daniel." The research team expanded their investigation. They consulted with Dr. Alan Pembroke, a cognitive psychologist from Northwestern University who specialized in memory formation and childhood cognition. Dr. Pembroke was particularly interested in the mechanisms by which Daniel might have acquired such specific historical knowledge. He designed a series of tests, showing Daniel photographs of various locations in Washington, D.C., mixing authentic Civil War-era images with carefully constructed fakes. Daniel consistently identified the authentic images and rejected the fakes, even when the fakes were based on similar architectural styles from a period. He pointed to a photograph of the White House's Blue Room. "I know this space," he said. "I spent time here. It feels familiar." Dr. Pembroke then showed Daniel images of various people from the 1860s, again mixing authentic photographs with period-appropriate fakes. When shown an authentic photograph of Mary Todd Lincoln in a dress she'd worn in 1864, Daniel's eyes filled with tears. "That's Mary," he said quietly. "She wore that dress to a reception. She was beautiful, but she was sad. We were all sad then." The specificity of Daniel's emotional responses intrigued the research team. These weren't the reactions of a child reciting memorized facts. They carried genuine effect, authentic emotional weight. Dr. Pembroke conducted interviews with Daniel's teachers, neighbors, and extended family members. None reported any unusual interest in Lincoln or the Civil War before Daniel's revelations began. His school's curriculum hadn't covered the Lincoln assassination in detail. The family's television viewing habits, internet history, and library records showed no pattern of Lincoln-related content consumption. Rebecca Cooper provided additional context during a private interview with Dr. Morrison. "Daniel has always been sensitive," she explained. "He picks up on other people's emotions easily. But this is different. When he talks about Lincoln, it's like he becomes someone else. Older, more burdened. And then afterwards, he's exhausted. He'll sleep for hours." The research team documented several instances of this phenomenon. After longer sessions discussing his Lincoln memories, Daniel would become physically tired, sometimes falling asleep almost immediately. His parents reported that during these sleep periods, he would sometimes speak fragments of sentences that sounded anachronistic, using vocabulary and phrasing that seemed more appropriate to the 19th century than the 21st. Dr. Morrison arranged for Daniel to visit Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. in October 2019. The visit was carefully structured, with cameras recording Daniel's reactions and responses. Walking into the theater, Daniel stopped just inside the entrance. "It's different," he said, "but it's the same too. The feeling is the same." He walked slowly through the theater, his parents and the research team following at a distance. When he reached the stairway leading to the presidential box, he paused. "I don't want to go up there," he said quietly. His mother asked why. "Because I know what happens up there," he replied, "and I don't want to remember it again." Dr. Hernandez, who had joined them for the visit, gently suggested they could stop. But Daniel shook his head. "No, I need to see it. I need to know if it's real or if I'm making it all up." He climbed the stairs slowly, each step seeming to require effort. At the entrance to the presidential box, now enclosed behind glass, he stood silently for several minutes. Finally, he spoke. "The box was smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I'm smaller now. But I can feel it. The warmth. The sound of people laughing. And then the sound that ended everything." He turned to look back at the stage. "From up here, the actors looked so small," he said. "I remember thinking they seemed like toys, like little figures moving around on a table. And I remember Mary laughing at something one of them said, and I was happy she was laughing." Back in the main theater, Daniel walked to a specific spot and stopped. "Here," he said. "This is where Booth landed when he jumped from the box. He hurt his leg. I couldn't see it happen, but I heard about it later, somehow." He caught his spur on the flag. Historical accounts confirmed that Booth had indeed caught his spur on a Treasury Guard flag draped over the presidential box, contributing to the broken leg he sustained when landing on the stage. This detail, while known to Lincoln assassination scholars, wasn't prominently featured in general histories or popular accounts. The investigation continued through 2020 and into 2021. Dr. Morrison assembled a panel of experts to review all documentation, interview transcripts, video recordings, psychological assessments, and historical verification reports. The panel included 2 psychiatrists, 3 historians, 2 cognitive psychologists, and 1 forensic linguist who analyzed Daniel's speech patterns during his Lincoln recollections. The consensus report, completed in March 2021, was cautiously worded. The panel could find no evidence of fraud or deliberate fabrication. Daniel's knowledge exceeded what would be expected from normal exposure to historical materials. His emotional responses appeared genuine and age-inconsistent. He displayed grief and weariness that seemed more appropriate to an elderly man reflecting on trauma than a child role-playing. However, the report stopped short of confirming Daniel's claims as genuine past life memories. The panel noted several alternative explanations. Cryptomnesia, where Daniel might have been exposed to detailed historical information he didn't consciously remember. Heightened empathetic abilities that allowed him to imaginatively reconstruct historical experiences with unusual vividness, or some form of dissociative phenomenon. What remained unexplained was the specificity of certain details Daniel had provided, details not widely published or easily accessible, particularly to a child with no demonstrated interest in the subject. Dr. Hernandez noted in her contribution to the report that Daniel had accurately described the wallpaper pattern in the Peterson house bedroom, a detail she herself had only learned about through obscure archival research. By the time Daniel turned 11, his Lincoln memories began to fade, a pattern noted in other cases of children claiming past life recall. He could still remember having the memories, but the memories themselves became less vivid, less immediate. It's like trying to remember a dream, he explained to Dr. Morrison during their final interview in June 2021. I know it happened, but I can't quite get back to it anymore. Dr. Morrison asked how Daniel felt about this fading. Relieved, mostly, Daniel admitted. It was hard carrying around someone else's death in my head, especially such a sad death. But also, he paused, searching for words, also a little sad, because it felt important. Like I was supposed to remember it for a reason. What reason? Dr. Morrison asked. Daniel shrugged, a gesture that reminded Dr. Morrison that despite everything, Daniel was still just a child approaching adolescence. Maybe to remind people that presidents are just people, he said, that they hurt and get tired and want to rest, that they love their wives and miss their children, that they're not just faces on money or names in history books. He looked out the window of Dr. Morrison's office. Or maybe there's no reason. Maybe sometimes people just remember things from before, and it doesn't mean anything special. It just is. The case of Daniel Cooper remains open in the files of the Institute for Consciousness Studies. Dr. Morrison continues to check in with Daniel and his family annually, documenting the long-term effects of his childhood memories. As of 2024, Daniel is a typical teenager who plays basketball, enjoys video games, and struggles with algebra. He rarely discusses his Lincoln memories unprompted, though when asked, he maintains that they were real experiences, not imagination or fantasy. The broader implications of Daniel's case continue to resonate through academic circles studying consciousness, memory, and the possibility of existence beyond a single lifetime. Whether Daniel truly remembered Abraham Lincoln's final moments or whether something else entirely occurred remains unresolved. What seems clear is that a 9-year-old boy in Ohio carried knowledge and emotions that transcended his own brief life experience, speaking with a weariness and wisdom that belonged to someone who had endured far more than any child should know. For those who witnessed Daniel's accounts firsthand, his parents, the research team, the historians who verified his details, the experience left a profound impression. We may never know with certainty what Daniel experienced, Dr. Morrison reflected in a 2023 interview. But we documented something extraordinary. A child who spoke of death and loss and the weight of leadership with an authenticity that defied explanation. Whether that came from past life memory, some other form of consciousness phenomenon, or something we don't yet have the language to describe, it challenges our understanding of memory, identity, and the nature of human consciousness itself. The Lincoln bedroom at the Peterson house, where Abraham Lincoln died on April 15, 1865, remains a site of historical pilgrimage. Visitors stand in silence, contemplating the end of a presidency and a life. They cannot know that in a suburb of Columbus, Ohio, a boy once remembered lying in that too-short bed, staring at floral wallpaper, feeling his life slip away as dawn approached. They cannot know that those memories carried across more than 150 years, might offer a glimpse into questions humanity has asked since the beginning. Who are we? What endures? And do our stories truly end when our bodies fail? If you're fascinated by cases like Daniel's that challenge our understanding of consciousness and memory, subscribe to our channel for more investigations into past life phenomena, reincarnation research, and the mysteries of human experience that transcend conventional explanation. Retry Claude can make mistakes. Please double-check response.